Well, the safe return home yesterday of Expedition 43 Commander Terry Virts, along with flight engineers Anton Shkoplerov and Samantha Cristoforetti, after their stay aboard the station, signaled the start of Expedition 43. And to get a preview of some of the highlights of the increment that has just started, I'm pleased to welcome Scott Stover here. Scott is the lead flight director for Expedition 43 and 44, so he's staying on for another increment through the Expedition 44. And Scott, welcome. I know you're very familiar with this room. You've worked right over there, but now you're kind of overseeing the team from the crow's nest, and I guess representing this team to the outside mission management team and other entities within flight operations, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. As a flight director, sitting here in this room, you're in charge of the day-to-day, what's going on, answering crew calls, making sure the timeline is getting done. As an increment lead, what we do is we look. I often say I live a couple weeks in the future. We're always looking at what's coming up and making sure that the overall requirements and big picture plans for the rest of the increment is getting planned out and hopefully successfully completed. We always have hiccups here or there, or if a piece of hardware doesn't work the way we want or something like that. But our goal is to, the program, NASA, and the international partners all have requirements, whether it's science experiments or adjusting the space station's configuration or anything like that. And we plan to get that all accomplished as crew time is available to do that.
You and I actually chatted yesterday afternoon about this, but has there been any significant impacts to the schedule with the kind of the 1 month delay in the start of Expedition 44? I know we chatted about Expedition 43 staying a little longer, so talk about the impacts, if there even are any, for the expedition that just got underway.
Yeah, so we've had to rearrange a few things. The benefit of having the 41S crew stay longer was we did relocate the permanent multi-purpose module. That had been planned to do later in the summer, but with the additional crew time that was available early in the increment, we were able to get that accomplished. Now, we do have here about 6 weeks where we're down to just 3 crew members on board. Included in that will be the SpaceX 7 mission. So one of the things that we're sort of constrained on is how much we can actually do with only 3 crew members on board. Right. We're going to be pulled pretty tight during that time frame, and we'll have to make up for it once we get back up to 6 crew.
The planning team, your team, is also working toward potentially some spacewalks this summer. The dates are still, I guess, to be determined based on how the schedules fall out with the launches and everything. But these spacewalks actually constitute a pretty significant change to the station in terms of its outer mold line, which we call in the business, I guess. But give us an overview of what that means when we get to that point.
Yeah, specifically, the one U.S. spacewalk that we're trying to get into the schedule right now has to install the international docking adapter. That piece of equipment flies up on the SpaceX 7 mission, and it enables the actual first docking of a commercial crew vehicle to the ISS. So it takes 2 crew members to go outside, and then also the help of the Canadian robotic arm and the SPDM to install this docking adapter on the very front end of the ISS on PMA2. Once that gets installed, and then of course after our commercial partners get fully ready, ISS will be ready to accept a commercial crew vehicle. So we're very excited about having that capability brought on board.
You also have a number of visiting vehicles that are planned during this increment, and potentially one of those being relocated at some point after it arrived. What's the story there?
So yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. We have the SpaceX 7 mission coming up here in late July, and so once that gets there, lots of science experiments coming up, lots of hardware coming up, and including that international docking adapter. And the crew will be performing those experiments, trying to transfer all the cargo. And we have Dragon stays on board for about 30 days. We might extend this one closer to 40 if we can, and get get it loaded up with important science samples and hardware to come home. And then later in August, the plan is to launch the HTV number 5, which is our JAXA, our Japanese transport vehicle. And that one will initially berth to the nadir side or the bottom side of Node 2. That's where we put most of our cargo vehicles. However, there's the possibility that the next SpaceX will be coming up right after that, and we may have to keep HTV on board while SpaceX is there. So we may be moving the HTV module to the Node 1 nadir. That's where the permanent multi-purpose module was just relocated from. And that way we may actually have 2 cargo vehicles there at the same time. Lots going on, and HTV is planned to stay beyond the end of increment 44 into the increment 45. At the same time, Soyuz operations will be going on, Progress operations will be going on. A very busy time, what August and early September looks like.
Obviously, there's a lot of science that's going on related to the one-year mission, and that science keeps coming up, right? So, as with the SpaceX flight.
Correct, and just because the crew members are on board, science keeps going. You know, as you can imagine, a normal person has to go to the doctor once a year, or you may, you know, depending on your health condition, need to go to the doctors more often. Well, in order to get good science samples, the crew members are scheduled at regular intervals to have science samples taken. You talked about VO2 max earlier. That's one of the examples, and as you said, it's about once a month that happens. So we have very flight day specific samples and activities for the crew that monitors their health, and that's the data that the doctors are gathering to understand the impacts on the body.
One last question to touch on. It's a busy agenda, obviously, especially with 3 people up there right now, but is it helpful having an experienced crew like this one up there?
Oh yes, I would say it's definitely beneficial to us. You know, if we launch new crew members that have never flown in space before, we have to give them some adaptation time. Everybody is affected differently to zero-G. Some people it's like a fish returning to water. Other people it's the fish out of water kind of thing, where the body just needs time to adjust. You know, ISS is a very large complex where we store things. Everything like that can be confusing. If you have a crew member that's been there before, has served long duration there before, they sort of know it, and we don't have to give them all that adaptation time, and they know where things are and whatnot, so they come up to speed and can be plugged in really quickly.
Great. Well, Scott, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to stop by. I know you're in this room all the time, and I'm glad I was able to snag you today to come by and talk about the increment a little bit.
Yep, my pleasure.